Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm really happy that we're starting getting such a great cooperation with you. So, I'm really happy to get all those commentaries that you write below my web scraping videos and tutorials. And I'm always happy to help you with your own projects when you're learning things and, answering all these different technical questions on how to scrape this site or how to use this sort of a technique or etc etc. So this is really flattering, to be honest, to get that such a huge amount of feedback. In return, I couldn't ever imagine that one day this would go this kind of way. So thank you guys. I really appreciate that. But even more, I'm so happy because you don't only ask these technical questions, but rather some of the questions that regards to how to land a job as a Python developer specializing in web scraping. So how to start freelancing, and these questions are even more valuable for me because one of the main goals of this channel is actually to help you guys to pick up the proper skills, the necessary skills to land a job as Python developer specializing in web scraping niche in particular. So if one day a guy would write a commentary like Code Monkey King, this is me, by the way, for those of you who don't know. So I'm Maxim Korsh, also known as Code Monkey King. So if a guy would one day write me like Code Monkey King, I did land a job thanks to your videos, I would have probably be the happiest man in the world because I could have helped somebody. So basing on the big amount of questions I've received recently from you guys, and now I'm talking regarding the questions that were actually all about like how to get a job, what in particular you need to know, or what kind of skills you need to gain, and so on, so on. So questions basically. So just in this video I will try to answer all the questions, but not by answering every question in particular, but instead I will try to provide you the general guidelines I'm following myself basically, and hopefully I would love to trying to give you a method that would allow you to answer all of your questions arising along the way, because if you're starting doing this stuff, lots of questions arising really, and it's all the matter of picking up a particular solution every day basically. So picking up a particular choice, so whether to go this way or that way, etc. So just to I'm starting very general, but I'll try to get as specific as possible at the very end of this video, and just to gather my thoughts into one tight flow. Basically, I've put some notes on the left of the screen here, and so let me just read some words that I've written, because I just want to read them as they are, and then we'll start this kind of lecture. And I'm not a professor at any point, guys, don't think that, but just I came up with an understanding that naming the things as they literally are is a good way of going, because when you're doing something and you give it a wrong name and then you publish this on YouTube, then a guy could say like it's not exactly what you claim it to be. So first I was considering this like videos to be my blog videos, but eventually after watching them for quite a bit of time, I realized that it's more like lectures. So let's kind of keep trying this format, and this is the very first lecture, if you can say so, that I claim to be a lecturer, and for those of you who maybe just kind of wonder that I don't have an education from college or things like that, so I'm a complete self-learner, and this might be a bit weird that the self-learner is trying to read a lecture, but still I consider this format to be the most appropriate in this particular case. So let's actually start. So we're going to be talking about the understanding process of becoming professional from no skills to landing a job of your dream as Python developer specializing in web scraping. But just as an example, I want to be talking not only about Python and web scraping, but about landing the jobs and gaining skills in general, just to give you an idea of the full cycle of the career growth, which is entry number 4 in this list. So let's say that the intro has just ended, so we can skip the entry number 1 here, and let's talk about self-learning versus college education or whatever, things like that. So for some of you guys, it might be a difference, like say college versus Udemy courses, and you might wonder that college is like the traditional education and say Udemy courses is like a self-learner's path. But I need to completely disagree with this statement, because for me personally, the distinction between self-learning as a process and some sort of a traditional education is not the matter of a format like it's if you're going to a class or if you're doing this at home just watching the videos you've paid for, so it doesn't really matter that much. So the most difference is what kind of patterns do you follow when you learn. So this is the most ever important difference, because when you're in college or when you're following Udemy courses or whatever programs existing already, you're not taking a decision of what in particular you're going to learn and how exactly you're going to proceed, because the course itself assumes it already assumes some sort of a path that is created for you. And the problem there is however good the course is, but the path being described there is general and it won't ever fit you 100%. So that's the most pain in all the available courses. So even if you succeed that course, and even if you will get those skills, and eventually you will, if that's something you like actually, but even in that case, that doesn't ever mean that you will actually land a job, because you have no understanding of the real world jobs, some sort of an examples of how it works for real and things like that. So I just want to provide a short example of what I'm talking about now. So let's consider a person who has just learned the alphabet, and then he learned to compose the letters into the words, and then he learned to compose the words into the sentences, and sentences to some sort of a short stories, or maybe even long stories, doesn't matter. And even if you give this guy all the promotion in the world, so like one day everybody would know about this guy, and the next day, maybe not the next day, maybe the next, I don't know, like couple months, he would be writing a novel. Nobody would actually buy that novel. Why? Because not because he's not famous. So we just did him famous. Bear this in mind. So we just did this guy famous. So even if he is famous, due to the lack of the experience of real world writing, of understanding what in particular people want to hear, want to read, without a life experience that actually influences the writer's career in a great manner, basically. So without all of those things, even though it seems like he can write, but nobody would actually read that. Nobody would buy that. So maybe somebody would read that, but nobody would buy that for sure, absolutely for sure, because they are not actually buying when we're talking about novels, it's not about to buy, like skills of writing text without grammar mistakes, right? It's about it's the matter of buying some sort uh, of uh, of a tight life experience of the author, dedicated to some particular topics he's describing in his novel, no matter if this is science fiction or just a bare fiction, or maybe whatever genre. It doesn't matter really that much. So literally the same happens in programming. So imagine like you've picked up the Python basics. So I'm just starting already talking about the point number 4, but it's not that at the moment. So just consider that Python, I don't know, like requesting beautiful soup or scrapey or selenium or whatever, and you can kind of write some sort of a scraper, but like the very first that you will come up with is, how can I get clients, who am I supposed to be working for? And if you just try to pick up some random opportunities, in most cases it would end up with a complete disaster, because you would encounter some sort of an issues that you wouldn't ever imagine they exist, actually, because working as a freelancer is not only just the matter of having a proper skills. It's more like to understand the proper way of who is your client and how exactly you're working with him and things like that. So that is known as oh my god, I forgot the word. I wanted to say social skills. No, it's not social. It's called soft skills. So if you've been watching John Sonmez's videos on YouTube, he talks about this quite pretty a lot in his Simple Programmer YouTube channel and in Baldock Mindset as well, if I'm not mistaken. So he's talking about the soft skills to be the most ever important skill for a freelancer, basically, because you need to know how to negotiate with your client, how to manage your workflow, and all this things that goes beyond just the bare programming skills matters even more. So this is just I've provided this example just to demonstrate that the bare skills are not that valuable, because if you have the bare skills, you would encounter the world's dilemma that actually in order to get a job you need an experience, and in order to get an experience you need a job. So if you go this way, you would definitely encounter this dilemma, and there is no way out, basically, because this sort of best practices learned by college really brings you to this dilemma, and when you're going a true self-learning path, you basically don't encounter that dilemma, because you just start getting experience by doing something, and eventually this turns into your job, and you just don't have that problem at all. So I hope this point is clear. So by saying college or whatever traditional ways of learning, I don't consider them to be self-learning, because again they decided for you what in particular to learn, what kind of skills to get. So they just responsible for the skills that you would obtain at the very end of the course, but they don't guarantee that you would obtain a skill to apply your skills. Okay, so they can't guarantee that, because the format of the courses they provide in can't actually provide that feature as well. Believe it or not, this might have sounded quite a bit strange, but for those of you who has tried this on your own, you probably understand what I'm talking about. So let's move on, basically. So the previous issue I've been describing, like the self-learning versus college, comes from the next point. So the point number 3, concrete goals versus vague understanding. So if you have a vague understanding, mostly you would consider going to college. Because if exactly the vague understanding of your own self, of the life around you, of your career opportunities and things like that, kind of this is, oh my god, I'm sorry, just okay guys, I hope the I hope the recording is still on actually, so probably I need to shake my mouse from time to time just in order to avoid this behavior, or I don't know, maybe just trying to push some button on my keyboard. Okay, so what I was talking about. So the vague understanding, yeah, and that sort of a vague understanding of you don't know who you are, you don't understand where you come from, and you have no idea where you're going to in your life, in your career, and just absolutely no idea. And that's the way why people considering somebody else to pick up the path for them. But when they do consider it, they need to pay for this consideration in future, and eventually we're entering what Dr. Pai calls business bullshit. So that's kind of sort of a slavery when you already did land a job and you thought that that was a job of your dream, but then your boss is torturing you and you understand that this is not exactly that this is absolutely different thing compared to what was in your head when you initially made some efforts to go this way and to get this job. So that's kind of the problem. So on the other hand, when you have a concrete goals, you're starting gaining an ability to trying to understand your own limits, your actual opportunities, and basing on that, you can pick up the path on your own. And obviously, I need to say that having a concrete goals and concrete understanding of your own self, of your again, like opportunities and things like that, is not for young people, because young people have vague understanding, and that's pretty normal. Like I started coding when I was actually 30, and I started making money on it when I was I don't know, 32, I guess. So, or maybe 31. Yeah, no, 32 actually. So somewhere between 31 and 32. So I really had some experience in my life already. So, and like when you're getting older, you realize that you don't have all the time in the world. So you realize that your life is gonna end up one day, and that's a very concrete feeling. And like if you have that feeling, you just don't have time for considering somebody else's paths that they kind of providing you within the courses or things like that. So you're like starting to realize that you're the only one responsible for the life steps that you're making, basically. So you're the only one responsible for what you will get in return. So that's very important thing. So obviously, if you're kind of 20 years old, it's not really that easy to have that concrete understanding, because you didn't yet live that long to get that, basically. And if somebody who is watching this video is now at the college, or so I'm not telling you that this is bad, on the contrary. So everybody has to go his own path, and the things I'm talking about, it's not for young people. So you need to live some life before you came up with this thoughts, ideas, and considerations. So just to summarize what I've already said, I just want to say that having concrete goals in mind is absolutely essential for self-learning. And actually, according to my own definition of who is the guy who does the self-learning, actually that's the guy who have the concrete goals. And from there on, we encounter what is known as, I would like to call this a full cycle of career growth. So when you have a concrete goals, that's the starting point. So let's imagine like you have no skills at all, so you don't have literally anything, but at the same time you have a very concrete understanding of what in particular and how exactly you want to achieve in this life, in this career, in your job opportunities and things like that. So just when you have that concrete goals in mind, when you kind of grow enough to manage those goals, to understand them, to pick up them, to describe them at least for your own self, that's the entry point. And the entry point starts the title of this lecture claims, like from no skills to landing the job of your dream. So and even though I'm talking regarding web scraping in particular, just Python development and freelancing, still I just want to walk through some of the general steps that are absolutely essential, basically. And one more thing to mention here, that this kind of parts here, so this picking ups, so all the regards to both self-learning or kind of college learning, Udemy courses learning, whatever. So these steps are general, and the difference is how in particular you're gonna be making this step. So if you're a self-learner, you're gonna be picking up programming language, framework, target clients auditory, gaining new source of clients and spreading your knowledge one way. And if you're considering college or Udemy courses or whatever traditional method of education, you will go through exactly the same steps, but that would be a way more different, because with a vague understanding, you would be picking, say, programming language not basing on what you feel inside, what kind of fits your mentality or things like that, but you would watch the videos like the most popular programming languages in 2020 year, things like that. Same with the framework. And when you would go for your clients, in most cases you would be trying to land a job in Google, like, because it's like somebody considers this to be the best opportunity in the world. Why I basically think that it's not so, because the best opportunity is the one that fits your mentality, your life principles, and the one that doesn't destroy your inner world, basically, which is, to my own understanding, is the very main thing in humans' life. So basing on whether you're a self-learner or a college student, let's call this like so, there will be a huge difference while walking through this picking up steps described in this entry number 4. So but nevertheless, let me talk about this pickups, and obviously I would be talking about them from the self-learner's perspective, because I walk through them as a self-learner with a concrete understanding of who am I and what I need in this world, like that. So picking up a programming language, initially at the very beginning, I kickstarted with JavaScript. I was trying to create a chessboard in JavaScript, and as far as that wasn't really about landing a job, and I was doing programming just for fun. I didn't even dream to get a job as a programmer at that time. So maybe it's a bad choice. But that's just a history. And then later on, I picked up C programming language, because I felt like JavaScript is too high level, and I wanted to understand the very gist of programming itself. So even though now my videos all along dedicated to applied programming skills, I spent for about 3 years to pick up the programming basics from the very scratch. And obviously it's not essentially needed if you just want to land a job as a freelancer, but anyway, it's kind of useful, because if you have these fundamentals, you can switch the programming languages in 1 hour. Basically you can kind of go to YouTube and find a video like learn JavaScript in 1 hour, learn Python in 1 hour, learn whatever language in 1 hour, and you're done basically. Because that's by the way that's how I learned Python. So I just pick up a 1 hour Python video, and that's kind of it. So I just needed to say like how can I do for loops, how can I consider if statement conditions, I don't know, like try except statements, so how can I send variables, so how can I convert string to integer, and maybe a couple more techniques, and that's kind of it. So I already had an understanding of what the loops are, what the conditionals are, so the data types. So all this general programming basics is always it's better if you have them compared if you don't. But again, please bear in mind that I was learning the fundamentals of programming not to land a job. I was doing that because I was interested in that, and that's a very important part here. So if you want to get a job and you will start learning C, you probably won't ever get a job, because you will just stuck in that C forever, because C is so deep and so complicated, even though it seems to be quite pretty simple language. I went even further. After C, I started learning assembly, and the way I stopped it is actually I never tried to write code in processor machine codes, even though I was tempted doing that, by the way. So before actually starting to think about getting a job as a programmer, first I dived as deep as I could in programming, in understanding the programming basics and principles. So that's kind of stuff. But anyway, when later on I realized that I actually want to start making money on this, I started to look for the client's needs and what kind of jobs are wanted on the market and things like that. And I don't know how exactly this happened, but for some reason I've encountered web scraping. And at that time I was also learning some web development, and I did even land some jobs on Upwork as a web developer after watching a couple of Traversy Media's videos of the great channel by Brad Traversy. So I just kind of picked up a couple of videos, and the next month I did my first $500 based on the knowledge on those videos, and that's kind of it. And when I later on was kind of telling this story to my clients, nobody actually believed me, but that's true, believe it or not, but that's not the point. Okay, so and later on I've realized that even though web programming is really cool and nice and so on, but again, like it's not just a matter of kind of what niche you're supposed to pick. So because it's more like about what kind of target clients auditory are you ready to work for. And as far as that time, I didn't have the understanding that I have now, and I thought that working for companies is a good thing basically. But when I realized that it has some major downsides that are completely inappropriate for me in particular, I realized that the initial choice of web development wasn't the very right one in my life. So I decided to do more like web scraping, even though I still was kind of working on some web development projects. I mean, like my web development skills actually served my web scraping skills, and eventually it happened that I started with Node.js and Express framework, and in relation to Mongo database, and I had a scrapers written with Python scraping, and that was a problem because it's possible to run scraping spiders from within a Node.js app, but I realized that if my main specialty is web scraping, and if the Python is the most widely used programming language in this niche, that it would be better to pick up some Python based web frameworks. And First, I took a look at the Django, but I realized that I hate it with all my heart, basically. And I thought like there are no nice web frameworks on Python. But later on, eventually, accidentally, this happened by an accident. I've encountered a Flask framework, and that was my love, basically. So I've started using both Python Flask and Python Scrapy frameworks in cooperation, and that's the part of my career when I did work for one of our clients. Oh, thanks for liking my video, man. Oh, this is Aaron. Aaron, thanks for liking this video. I guess you would also be interested in watching this one in particular. Thank you, man. Okay, so I was working for one of my clients. It was a long-term project that I dropped for about a couple of months ago when I switched completely to web scraping, actually. And you know, like when I was doing that, I realized that just in order to work, I need to shift my my web development skills from Node.js and JavaScript in particular to Python. And I watched another couple of Trevor Semedia's video regarding Python Flask, and since then I started working as a Flask developer already. Yeah. So in this case, so you know, like you should always remember that programming language serves the purpose of solving the client's tasks or user tasks. It doesn't matter. So if you don't have your tasks being defined, it's incredibly hard to pick up a programming language. So you know, like if you're doing just the bare web development, you can consider JavaScript, Python, PHP, whatever, and even Golang is quite pretty cool for the back end. But you know, like if you go into some, again, like concrete goals versus vague understanding, you know, like my vague goal was to actually land a job as a programmer, but that was too broad. And later on, I realized that the perfect format for me to consider as a freelancer is just the bare web scraping. And you know, like many developers consider it to be too boring, but I'm not one of them, because I consider web scraping to be a really intriguing job. And it's always, like Dr. Pi said once in the commentaries under one of my videos, so like Code King is always he always finds the way to take the rabbit out of the hat. So that was such an amazing commentary. So I really like picking up rabbits out of the hat every time, again and again. And you know, like I like web scraping because you can fix the format of your job, and you just can dive deeper and grow within this narrow scope of your specialty, of your professional skills. And I really like going deep, so web scraping is perfect in this case because it's trivial from the format perspective, so you just need to scrape the data, just that's kind of it. But when it comes to the particular technical implementations, it happens that you need to understand the web technologies in great details to be able to extract the data that is not to be extracted that easily, and sometimes you need to reverse engineer the AJAX request and things like that. So you know, like even though I dropped the web development as in terms of my kind of main profile, still I'm happy that I was working with web technologies for about a year, because now it helps me to scrape the data that's even might seem to be unscrapable at a glance. But exactly understanding the web development technologies makes you a really good professional in web scraping. So it's really important, and it's a really good skill to understand how web works in general, regardless of programming language and the framework, to become a good developer in web scraping. So as far as my concrete goals has been defined, and I've realized that I actually want to write the bare scrapers and just to get paid for that, and that's kind of it. So the weapon of choice has fallen to Python, and then it came to picking up a framework. But like, again, like, it happened that actually my very first paid no my very first paid job was in JavaScript. Yeah, but that was the job for one of my friends, so I don't know if I can count that or not. But the very first job that I got paid from Upwork client was actually what was related to Scrapey Spider. And like, that was an interesting time because I had a call from one of my friends, and he said, like, if tomorrow, if you would pick up a Python Scrapey framework within one night, then tomorrow you'll get hired by one of my clients. And like, I was so excited that time. I was reading the Scrapey documentation all night long, and the next day I actually got that job. But like, this was so weird because when it came to providing the selectors, I had no idea at that time. I had no idea how Scrapey selectors work. So I just tried to make use of beautiful soup selectors instead. So that's kind of it. But eventually, I needed. I've never done a web scraping job using a request in beautiful soup in Pure. But I thought, like, it's really that I really have to actually pick those up as well, because that helped me to understand Scrapey framework in great detail. So like, Scrapey framework is like a spaceship, while request in beautiful soup is like a skateboard. So first you need to learn how to ride the skateboard, and then you can consider the spaceship. So that's kind of it. So having a concrete goal of a desire to write web scrapers, I've picked up the Python programming language. Then I considered the Python Scrapey framework, and then I've encountered the next issue, so the client's auditory. So I've realized that there are different clients, like private clients, startups, big companies, and the vast majority of in between variations, basically. And like, again, at that time I thought that the client I had was kind of one and forever, and I would never consider someone else. But later on I realized that I need to pay too much for that opportunity, because like, the job has started to become more and more boring, and like, it wasn't really that profitable, and also it wasn't the job of my dream as well. So I've realized that it's time to change something. That's kind of a very important part as well. So at that point, I've encountered another issue that you need to pick up the source of gaining in new clients. And like, eventually one of my friends introduced me to Upwork, saying, like, this is the only and this is the best opportunity for you as a freelancer. And I believe that with all of my heart. But later on I realized that that's the complete bullshit, because it's not true, actually. And some of the guys like Upwork, but like, not only Upwork but Fiverr as well, and maybe Guru, and other freelancing platforms, they all are kind of the same. And eventually, at like, I don't know what in particular the situation was kind of for about 5 years ago, but at this moment all the freelancing platforms are more like a remote job opportunities, and that's kind of it. So they don't have any freelance anymore within them. You need to pay this 20% fees, and this is too much. And like, when you're getting a takeoffs, it happens that you already done a couple of projects with this particular client, and you don't really need to work for him anymore. And so it's not really that profitable, and it's not free at all. So this freelancing platforms claims to provide some freedom for the developers, but obviously I personally think that's literally almost the same, like if you're just landing a job as a casually employed in a company, basically. So I can't see much difference. Maybe the only difference is that you're free in terms of your location and working hours, but that's not the freedom I was trying to achieve, basically. So I've realized that the the particular clients that I would love to work for, and it doesn't really matter whether they are startups or private or whoever. I just didn't want to work for companies, for big companies. That's the number one reason of leaving Upwork, actually. So I've realized that in order to just from the client's perspective, in order to consider me exactly as the developer he would like to write some code for him, and just to pick up some projects for him, just to get the jobs done. So literally solving his problems, his tasks. So I realized that it's all about the contact. So you need to, you know, like you need accountability with your clients. So it's very important. So like with the same skill set, you would have a perfectly successful project with this like client, and it would end up as a completely disaster with the wrong type of a client. So I realized that picking up random clients from Upwork is not the case, because simply you have no idea who is hiring you, and without having that sort of interaction, so the client can know you better. Without this, it's literally impossible to answer the simple question: is this is this job is worth of taking this? Is this project is worth of taking this or not? And Upwork doesn't provide this opportunity of knowing each other with your client completely, because the format of the job interviews is just puts you into a great tension. Like you're put into position like, sir, please could I write some code for you? And I hate that position, because it's completely wrong. Because like if you're like, I don't know, if you've been suffering in college for 5 years, you're used to suffer, and that's the proper way for you of doing things. But if you're got used to freedom, it's a complete disaster. It's definitely not the way to consider. So I've realized that Upwork doesn't really give me this middleware layer where I could have interact with my potential clients, and it doesn't provide some sort of an opportunity to showcase not only my skills but my working ethics, my relation to the projects. So how I consider the job. So what kind of coding development practices am I following? What kind of tools am I supposed to be using? What kind of particular techniques within the given programming language and framework do I consider to prefer, basically? Because let's take the Python script framework, and like item loaders and pipelines. So that's just very nice examples. So if you're working as a Python developer specializing in a scraping framework, and you're working on a web scraping project in a big company where lots of guys working with your code in particular, it's a really good idea to use these item loaders and pipelines, because encapsulating every single part of the code is a good idea. But like it all comes from the scalability perspective. So if you need same for the unit testing, like it all comes from the scalability perspective. So if you have a large code base, if you have a lot of developers that actually working with the same code, obviously you need to manage your code somehow, and you need like there should be some sort of a project leader, project manager who would be just managing the junior developers or things like that. And like it's not a freedom already, because that forces you to follow some sort of a guidelines that might violate your life principles, your working principles, your coding principles, and things like that. So it's not a way to go, definitely. And again, what I'm doing in particular, so I'm not using item pipelines and item loaders, but instead I prefer to provide all the data extraction logic within the single Python scripty spider file, because I don't know, like I just really like this minimalist approach and self-contained script that basically goes through all the job is done within one script, and I'm just providing the extended commentaries, so literally comment in every line in my code. So I didn't yet encounter a person who would take some of my code and say and tell me like, man, what is this code doing? So it's always clear, and it's always clear what in particular my code is doing. So, and I only got the feedbacks that my code is clean and clear from. Really different from the guys from, I don't know, from junior developers to senior developers who is working in big companies like in America. And like I had a Skype conversation with one of the guys like that, and he said like, man, your code is really clean, so where did you learn to code that way? And when I said like, I'm a self-learner, he said like, I can't believe this. I don't believe you're a self-learner. You have an understanding of the basics, and you're just, all your code is following some very concrete patterns that somebody had to learn. Somebody had to teach you those patterns that you're following basically. And I say, no man, like nobody taught me that. I've discovered those patterns myself, and I'm just trying to making them better every time I'm writing something, and that's kind of it. So it was really, it was incredibly hard for him to believe me, but nevertheless still like. So now when we have now when we eventually pick up a source of gaining a new client. So in my case, as many of you know, guys, it's a YouTube. And you know, like when I started using YouTube as a source of getting new clients, so you know, like I'm not doing YouTube for likes, subscriptions. I'm not going to put advertisement on my videos, well, at least at this moment in particular. I really want to pick this. I just really want to keep this channel the pure educational channel, helping people like me to land a job as a freelancers. So you know, like I'm using YouTube for my own needs, and I'm trying to avoid YouTube using me for his own needs. You know, like, because YouTube is an absolutely free opportunity to showcase your working skills, your social skills, your soft skills, your working ethics, literally everything. And you know, like the very nice stuff about this. So when a client actually mailing me to my email, and he is asking me to make some web scraping project for him. The most pleasant thing there is when he writes me a letter, it's like we know each other for a long time, you know, like. So my videos serve as some sort of a filter to filter the nasty clients, or maybe not the nasty clients, but those clients that I would definitely won't be able to cooperate with. So my videos already filtering only those clients that I'm totally comfortable working with, and in most cases those clients that are totally comfortable working with me as well. And watching all these videos, reading the nice feedbacks and commentaries below, it gives the client a trust. So the client is starting to trust you before even contacting you, before even knowing you. And say on Upwork, it's absolutely on the contrary. So client have no trust at all. So regardless of what you're talking about yourself in your profile, like you're pro, you're doing everything, you're just responsible, nobody cares about that. So he needs to make his own conclusions of whether you're responsible or not, and that's the main difference. While on YouTube, you know, like on Upwork, there is a need for this interview process, and you know, like on YouTube you're kind of like already hired. So if a client is watching your video and he says like, yeah, I like this man, I like this guy, I just want to hire him, I just want him to write some code for me. And in that case, instead of you writing your client like, sir, could I please write some code for you, your client is writing to you like, dear developer, can you please write some code for me? Do you have some free time to write some free code for me? So he's asking, okay, and that's very flattering, and that's very kind of the right way of doing things, because like that's the guarantee of a successful cooperation in, I don't know, like in 99% basically. So just a very important point to bear in mind. So and now we're going to the very last part within this sublist. So picking up a way of spreading your knowledge. And before I talk about the way of spreading your knowledge, first I want to talk about the need of spreading your knowledge, because the old Chinese wisdom says that you won't ever grow if you don't share your life experience with others. So in order to grow professionally, you really need to share your knowledge. It's not about like kind of teaching others in terms of like they do this in a college or in prepaid courses or things like that. By saying teaching, I don't mean teaching the traditional understanding. By saying teaching, I mean like giving an opportunity to the guys following these videos to kind of become a part of this real world process that starts with an empty Python file and ends up with a new upcoming transaction to your bank account. So like it's like instead of going to a college, you just go where the job happens and trying to stand near the guy who already is there and just trying to spend a couple of days with him just to feel that atmosphere. And I personally believe that this way of learning is way better in terms of that the man actually realizes what's the particular difference between his expectations and the reality. So in this case, he has a crystal clear picture of what he will get in return. So if we're really talking about this, the full cycle of the career growth, I would say that it starts when you have no skills at all, and it ends up at the point where you're starting sharing your knowledge with a community, basically that raised you, actually, things like that. So, and this is just a one iteration, and like it's like if you're writing a for loop, so you say like you're doing this in range from 0 to 10 times. So so the first iteration, you're picking up programming language, framework, target clients order, the sources of gaining new clients, and the way of spreading your knowledge. And then the next iteration, you're doing literally the same, but it's not about like picking up a new programming language, even though that's possible as well. But maybe trying to dive deeper into the existing programming language. If it regards the framework, you're kind of trying to find some more profitable techniques within that framework. Some techniques that fits your mentality and inner nature more like those that you've been using before. And same for picking the client's order, so you can narrow your client's order even more, and like the sources of gaining new clients. So what I'm doing like in this video, so first my videos were kind of too broad, and now I've realized that the only thing that you really kind of like to watch is actually like when I'm working on the real world projects regarding web scraping. So I'm narrowing this scope as well. Obviously another part of helping my subscribers videos are also on the cards, but that's kind of slightly bit different. So that's more like the way of spreading your knowledge, basically. So like on YouTube, I'm doing two things. I'm doing the videos that would implicitly promote myself as the web developer in order to just gain new clients hiring me and paying me for my skills and time. And on the other hand, I'm looking for better ways to improve spreading my knowledge. And like every time you're sharing your knowledge, you're kind of gaining an absolutely new understanding of what you already know in particular. So like you think that like you know something, but when you're starting teaching this others, when you're starting teaching others the particular stuff it turns out that you actually the angle of your point of view might have get changed, not even slightly bit, but significantly as well. So when you're teaching others, you're kind of learning yourself. So it's the great way to improve yourself personally or professionally, whatever way. So it's really great to share your knowledge. It makes you a better person. It makes you a better professional. It makes you growing basically. So I guess that the career goes as far as the career is growing as far as you're growing. As if you stop growing, your career still can grow, but you can turn out into a monster, and that's definitely not the way to go. So exactly following iteration by iteration in this loop of in the cycle of career growth. And again, like, it's not only about the career growth. So if we're talking about Python scrapey clients, YouTube videos, yeah, it's maybe like about the career growth, but the same principles are obviously applied to whatever part of our life. So I'm personally using these principles in all of my life. So, and I would also say that spreading these principles to the career growth is only my recent research, because the 30 years before I was doing literally the same, but not in regards to career growth. I was just busy with growing my rich inner world, things like that. So hope that's clear. So, and at the very end of this video, I would like to answer one of particular questions asked by one of my subscribers. So, where the job pricings come from, and the way why I kind of left this particular question at the very end is just because in order to answer this question, you need the entire context where I'm answering this question from, the context I'm being within, in order to answer this third kind of a question. So the first thing to consider is actually there are kind of two parts of where the price is coming from. The first part, and the most important and initial one, is the task itself, or problem statement itself. So clients are ready to pay money for for their issues to be resolved, and that's the very gist of business basically. So they have some sort of a problem, some sort of an issue, and they just need a guy who would solve this issue for them. That's kind of it. So this is the first part of the price. But like developers' salaries have a really wide range. So from, I don't know, like the cosmic range is between, like, I don't know, from $10 per hour to $34 to $300 per hour. So where the difference comes from. So in terms of the problem statements, obviously they have some limits. So if, say, you're making a web scraper, however complicated it would be, you won't take, I don't know, like $5,000 per one scraper. That's nonsense, obviously. But like if the scraper actually worth of $50, right? Then you can get paid $50, or you can get paid up to, I don't know, $500. And that's the second part of where the price is coming from. It's what is your how worth you are, how worth are you on the market actually. So what's the price of your skills multiplied by the time spent to get this solution basically. And this part is the significant one. And like as a developers, obviously we want to get paid for our jobs more than the bare price of the issue solution itself. And on the other hand, like you might think that clients actually always trying to pay some miserable prices for the job you're doing, but that's not true actually, and it also depends on the clients, because like if clients see like what are you doing, how exactly you're doing this, how you work, and if he likes this, if he likes the time in, if he likes how the deliverable looks like, if he likes the quality, like it's not always the matter of the script working, it's also maybe the matter of how the script looks like, the code layout, some architectural solutions and things like that. So there are always many ways of do kind of some sort of a trivial task. So how scalable your code is, uh, how extensible it is, how maintainable it is, and things like that. So if you're providing some sort of support or not, if he can hire someone else who would be supporting the code that you've written, or the other guy would just better try to write his own code instead of maintaining yours. So all these things matters as well, and the better your skills in these points I've just enumerated, the more valuable your job becomes, basically. And also it might depend on, so like if you have a kind of, I don't know, let's say $70 per hour project at this moment, and somebody's offering you like $20 per hour project, obviously you would reject that, and not because that's a bad project, but just because that's not profitable. But on the other hand, if you have no job at all, you would be working even for $10 per hour. And like when I'm talking about the dollars per hour, it's not always about the hourly rates. And by the way, I would like to demystify the hourly rates at the very end of this video, because I was mystified by the hourly rates back in those days, and I thought that working for an hourly rate is way better than working on a fixed price. But now I'm working only on the fixed price, and that's way more profitable. I know, like for about from 300 to 400% more profitable compared to working on an hourly paid basis. So that's another thing to think about. And in my earlier videos, I've been talking about this as well, and I was saying like, so hourly paid jobs usually takes more time and more responsibility, and you kind of more like stuck in those jobs, while the fixed price, you just get done and you get to the next, even if this regards to the single client. So just to bear that in mind as well. So this is it, guys, and obviously probably the very last thing to tell about price, since when you become a professional, you just kind of feel like how much do I want to get paid to take this job. So it's very personal, like we can have absolutely literally the same web scraping job, let's say, and someone would say I would do this job for $20, and someone would say I would do this job for $50, and someone would say I would do this job only for $400, and that's kind of it. So it's all the client is always to choose which one to pick up. Like the client is always to choose whether to pick up a developer on Upwork or other freelancing projects, or go into YouTube and find a guy who's making tutorials there, hire that guy. So like if you're thinking that the clients live only on Upwork and Fiverr, that's absolute nonsense. Clients live in YouTube as well, and I need to say that the brilliant and fantastic clients live on YouTube as well, because they can find you there, and that ends up with an absolutely fantastic cooperation in return for both of you. So like it's okay when you have, say, like exactly the same skills, but today you're doing this job for this amount of money, and say 2 months later you have this exactly the same skills, but you feel like you're getting more and more professional in this at this particular point, and you can start want to get paid more with exactly the same skill set, and that's just a matter of your inner I don't know, like of how you feel inside, basically. So you feel like that your time, your job is worth to get paid of a bigger amount from now on, and that's absolutely normal. So I think this is it regarding the pricings, basically. So for those who's interested in this particular topic, I hope that I actually did answer this in great details. Okay, so just in order to trying to actually end this video at some point, I would like to summarize all the above, basically. So like again, so if you're following the self-learning the self-learner path, and if you have the concrete goals, and if you understand the career growth cycles, in this case a wide range of opportunities is available to you, and the difference between which kind of opportunity are you supposed to pick up, it really depends on what in particular do you prefer, basically. And every one of us have some sort of his inner patterns, some life guidelines. If you don't yet have those life guidelines, you've seen somebody who has them, so somebody you're trying to look like, and that's the code monkey king principle. So the code monkey principle, basically. So monkey see, monkey do. So if you don't have those patterns within inside your own self, you always can look around and try to find somebody you would like to look like. So eventually you will end up with creating your own patterns. That's what I'm doing at this moment in particular. So I'm not gonna following somebody's patterns anymore, even though I reference somebody else's patterns quite often, and I'm considering some interesting key points from somebody else's patterns in my own life. So it's not, so I'm doing qigong, I'm doing programming, like it's literally the same. So the principles that I use in qigong is literally the same that those that I use in programming, and I'm rearranging my daily qigong practice quite often. And, I did even share some of the videos on this channel before. So that's all about having those inner patterns. Somebody could have, I don't know, maybe somebody's doing yoga or something like that. Maybe somebody's doing sports. Maybe whatever. Maybe you're doing some arts or whatever. So whatever art to consider, and I guess the programming is literally the same, exactly the same art, basically. So if you're doing some art, it has some patterns. It has some sort of a guidelines. It's based on some sort of a philosophy, and the philosophy is going even beyond the arts itself. So like Taoist philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, Christian philosophy as well. It's a bit too far from me, but still obviously a nice good thing there as well. So when every single detail in your life comes into one, so when there is no difference between your life, your daily life, your career life, your family life, your hobby life, and your interacting with your friends and your neighbors, your, I don't know. So when everything goes into one single unit within inside you, that's actually that's the exact point where when the patterns I've been talking about are spread into whatever part of your life. So why am I talking about this? This might seem a little bit too complicated, and you might wonder why is he talking about this stuff, and I will tell you why. That's because like quite often it happens that you're asking me some sort of questions within the commentaries below the videos, and the real answer is like the way you ask me to do, to describe, to make a tutorial on, or things like that. I'm not gonna do that just because it doesn't fit the patterns I'm following. So just try to understand that these patterns I'm talking about, that this kind of guidelines are so important that I won't ever like kind of change my way because somebody is asking me to change my way. So I would only change my way if I consider that's as a solution of a particular life situation or something. So if I consider that to be just a better way of living further on, doing things, making the job, doing my job, and things like that. So only in that case. And the only thing, so when we're talking about the self-learning, it's impossible to teach someone else. And the only thing that is actually possible is to show your own growth. So if you would consider some of my early videos, so either from the English pronunciation perspective or from coding content perspective, those videos really suck. And but I don't delete those videos because I want you guys to see how I've changed, say from 1 year ago, right, and up to right now, because the most nice commentaries I'm getting from you is where you say like when when you say like I've motivated you to start learning how to code, start learning programming, start freelancing as well. So that those commentaries are the most flattering for me. So and actually trying to motivate you guys, trying to inspire you is one of my like if my goal is to help you get the proper skills that would allow you to land a job as a freelancers, that's my goal, and my method is actually just to show you how I am doing this and trying to inspire you this like way. And also I would like to provide an absolutely fantastic example of how this works. So most of you know Dr. Pi, who is a good friend of mine and also the subscriber of this channel as well, and I'm subscribed to his channel, believe it or not. Yeah, that's I respect what he's doing so much. So I'm also subscribing to somebody else's channels. Yeah, it might matter that it's not, but it's true actually. So and when I'm looking at how Dr. Pi is growing, like I'm so happy because he started with no live coding at all, and even though he's a native English speaker, he didn't have those skills to talk during the videos that he has now. And after watching my videos, he was telling me like he's inspired to learn web scraping, to learn new things, to escape the business bullshit, trying to change his life completely, and also started making some videos. And when he did started so he started to actually trying some live coding, even though he used some pre-coded stuff, but I did that as well when I just started actually, so that's not a big deal. So he started to code in a live manner, and he started to talk in a live manner, and now it's way more different. It's way different Dr. Pi compared to the Dr. Pi that you could have encountered kind of half a year ago. So and I'm really happy that this is happening, and one day he would be getting fantastic clients as well. So just this like examples are really warming my heart basically, because that's exactly the way that's exactly the way that's the preferred way of self-development, when you're not blindly following something that you see actually, because it's like in a college, like just this blind following doesn't lead you to solve your life's problem, but just getting inspired by somebody actually invokes your own inner resources that driving you to make some your own steps in your lives. So and along the way, obviously, you can pick up some appropriate skills that might be really necessary in a particular professional niche like web scraping. So I would like to thank all of you guys for watching this lecture. Sorry if I've been talking too much, and just let me tell you one little joke beforehand. So, my clients were complaining that I'm talking too much, hence I started interacting with them via JSON files. So, I wish you all the best, guys. Go and pick up your dreams. Do the efforts and learn to code, learn web scraping. Try it, and you'll definitely succeed. I believe in you guys. So until next time, and take care. Bye.